Carrasco. And thank you for reading.
Manny Pacquiao, the gold, I don't think there'll be a problem for Manny.
Has its share of great fights. But every once in a while, human mind can also be controlled for nothing. Again, happy for nothing.
PM, only here on Para sa Bayan. And that's the opening bell for Round by Round presented by Eastern Communications. Mabuhay Pilipinas, welcome world. I'm Boy at Season.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. Dennis Principe joins us later on in the show.
On this edition of the show, ladies and gentlemen, mga kaibigan, let us begin this episode by talking about a story that just came out very recently in the UK edition of the Sun newspaper, where John Fury, ang ama ni WBC heavyweight champion Tyson Fury, has claimed that he would fight heavyweight legends Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield in the same night. Sipin niyo yan? He boasted about how he is not cheap apparently. Sabi daw niya, hindi pwede, hindi naman ako mumurahin na lalaban. And he would demand 1 million pounds, mga kaibigan, 69 million pesos for it. Just to give you a background on John Fury, ladies and gentlemen, itong former bare-knuckle fighter boxed 13 times as a professional with a record of 8 wins, 4 losses, and 1 draw. The last time he did so was in 1995, but since then, he has recently been training his sons, namely Tyson and light heavyweight Tommy Fury, who is 22 years old. Now, how does this story treat you, Mr. Songalia?
You know, believe it or not, I'm not the biggest fan of this fight. And the reason why is, why? Who cares? I don't get it. Like, you know, what reporter thought like, hey, you know, it's a great story. Let's ask like this elderly father of a heavyweight champion, what do you think? You know what I mean? Like, who thought this is a good idea to print this story? This is at a certain point, we have a responsibility to call this what this is. This is ridiculous. This is a money grab. This, you know, he wants a million pounds to fight Evander Holyfield and Mike Tyson the same night. Why would we want to see that? Like, what is the storyline there? I don't want to see Tyson. I don't want to see Holyfield. I don't want to see any of these older fighters get in the ring again because the sport is dangerous. And we need to understand that this is not like, you know, basketball or baseball where you can have like a, you know, the old timers game and everyone can have fun. No, this is punching people in the face. John Fury's greatest accomplishment is being the father of Tyson Fury. I don't think that warrants a big pay-per-view fight, especially at his age.
Well, Ryan, all your points are have a lot of merit, and I agree with you. But also, let me just add my 2 cents worth here. It seems that media all over the world now, for majority of them, the attention being given to a lot of celebrity fights or fights that involve a lot of, as you've mentioned, the old timers. Have been getting a lot of mileage. I think it also is simply because of the outrageousness of the idea. In the same breath, could it also be, Ryan, because of the lack of excitement as far as the sport of boxing is concerned?
I think that there is some frustration, sure, that the big fights have not been happening. And then the fights that are scheduled, something seems to happen. Either someone tests positive for COVID or gets injured, and we never see those fights. So there is a void to be filled there. I mean, no one woke up and said, hey, I want to see, you know, Evander Holyfield get in the ring with Vitor Belfort. You know, it's, you know, there was this void and it was filled. So I think that there is some truth to that. But at the same time, I think that we can do is express what is going on with the sport, why some of these fights that are happening are actually meaningful, are something to look forward to. And hopefully that will get people's minds off of the ridiculousness of, you know, wanting to see, I don't even know, who's the oldest living heavyweight champion now. Maybe we can get some guy in the 60s, 70s in the ring, you know, because I miss it. Nostalgia is great. You know, when Kiss goes on tour or Bruce Springsteen,
There
like
you
to see
go.
one like Vander Holyfield go out there again. Come on, like leave the past in the past.
Well, would you want to see the Beach Boys or whatever's left of the Beach Boys?
As long as they're not punching each other in the head, sure. Why not? I'll go to Kokomo. Cool.
Okay, just to end this particular topic of discussion, is it also maybe, well, you already mentioned COVID and what it has done to the sport. Do you think the audience really misses that enormity or that consecutiveness of good fights? Because as you said, COVID really has decimated, or not really decimated, but has really shortened or made a lot of the worthy bouts less. And add to that, if there is no avenue for them to watch it on television, if there is television coverage, makes them miss really good fights, and some of them cannot really be put out there, so to speak.
I was just thinking about this last night. Like, I remember that those few months during the beginning of the pandemic when there was no boxing. When because I was looking through Box Rack and I was trying to see what I'm going to write about this week, and
Right.
I was like, I remember this was empty one time. So I mean, and then we were sort of like grateful just to see anything. So that is past, and boxing has to get it together. And I think that starts with boxers taking the necessary precautions to ensure that they do not contract COVID, getting vaccinated. I mean, Teofimo Lopez had a fight canceled. That's going to be rescheduled, of course, for the next couple of weeks. Tyson Fury and Deontay Wilder is coming up. That was another fight that was rescheduled. So hopefully the wait is worth it, and we get to see these fights and move forward with the storylines of boxing, because it's sort of like when a TV show gets canceled mid-season and you have to find reruns to fill in the void. That's what we're getting now with reruns from Evander Holyfield, Mike Tyson, or whoever else wants to come back and try to make a payday.
So for all of you that are watching this, heed the words of Ryan Songalia. It does not pay to watch reruns. Okay, now to our second topic here on Round by Round. Mga kaibigan, sa larangan po ng professional boxing, marami mga fighters that have risen to the occasion in spite of them being the underdog. So we now ask, who in your opinion were the best Filipino boxing upsets? At meron po kami mga inilatag dito, mga kaibigan, ng mga laban ng featuring Filipino fighters who went up and were the underdog against a fighter who was more, how can we call it, more of mas llamado, mas pabor ang tao, mas matingkad ang pangalan, and eventually they won these fights. Ryan, let's start off with the fight between Manny Pacquiao and, of course, the late Lado Leduaba.
Mm-hmm. Yes, Lelo Leduaba was this very celebrated fighter. I mean, that was a very big spot for Manny Pacquiao to step into. Lelo Leduaba was a celebrated fighter. He was defending his world championship on the undercard of an Oscar De La Hoya fight. That's a big spot to be in, because Oscar De La Hoya was, if not the biggest star in boxing at the time, one of them. So Pacquiao takes that fight on short notice. He was a replacement, I believe, for Enrique Sanchez.
Yes.
And stepped in and just demolished Leduaba. Like, Leduaba was a very skilled technical fighter, knew how to counterpunch, from South Africa, intelligent, and Pacquiao just ran right through him. And I remember that last knockdown where it's almost like Leduaba collapsed out of just his spirit being broken. He goes down and he covers his face. Like, it was just such a brutal beating. And like, when you talk about upsets, it wasn't just like, oh, he came in and got the got a split decision. No, he demolished Laduaba.
Demolished Maglaba. And I would really agree with you because it seems like for all the shots that Lebuano was trying to counter with Pacquiao, seems that Pacquiao was not getting hurt at all. At all. That just made him so aggressive, just came on to Lebuaba, just came in, just threw the bombs, and eventually demolished Leduaba, who apparently, unfortunately, passed away this year.
Mhm. Such a nice guy too.
Next, mga kaibigan, let's talk about the this one. I love this fight as well. Nonito Donaire Jr. versus the flashy Victor Chinen.
Yeah, so Victor Chinen was getting this reputation is almost like, because a lot of his opponents were Filipinos, and he was really tearing through Filipino fighters in a big way. He had just beaten Diosdado Gabi and even Nonito's older brother, Glenn Donaire. And so he had this sort of reputation as like, a guy who beats a lot of Filipinos. Until the day that he ran into one particular Filipino by the name of Nonito Donaire, and that was just Donaire's coming out party. Like, Darchinian was very celebrated. He was getting a lot of big opportunities on Showtime. And in America, when you're in those lower divisions, it's really like only one fighter exists at any time. So, they don't really pay attention to the lower weights. Nonito Donaire had, fought on Showbox before, so he was familiar to some people in the audience. And I remember seeing him on ESPN Friday Night Fights and thinking, this guy's pretty good. Like, I want to see what happens with him. And he steps in there. He wanted revenge for his older brother, and he got it in as definitive way as possible. Darchinian, he was a very raw fighter, but awkward and very powerful. Ran into a left hook, and the corner had to jump in and make sure he didn't fall a second time.
Well, the referee had to stop the fight at 2 minutes and 6 seconds of that bout. Now, going to the next fight. This is taking us back a bit, Mr. Songalia. Andy Gannon versus Sean Obrady. All the way in 1981, my friend.
Yes, that was a big upset for Andy Gannon. And in fact, because I remember my father telling me about Andy Gannon. I'm like, who's that? I from before my time. But Gannon was a very big puncher. He's based in Hawaii and kind of a hard luck guy. He had a big punch, but just couldn't get to the next level and become a world champion. What he did against Sean O'Grady was just. That was a real demolition job there, because Obrady was a very popular fighter.
Yes.
On American TV. He was a star, and he had been a champion as well. And Gannon just tore right through him. Now what that did for him was it actually got Gannon to the doorstep of becoming world champion, because from that he was able to fight Alexis Arguello, and he even dropped Arguello with a pretty nice left hand. And but of course, Arguello, one of the classiest, one of the best fighters in those weight classes, the lightweight divisions ever, was able to come back and score the knockout victory.
Next, we have Rolando Pascua versus Humberto Gomez. This fight happened on December 19 in 1990 for the WBC light flyweight title. It was held at the Great Western Forum in Inglewood, California. Let's talk about first about Rolando Pascua, who was actually very underrated against Humberto Gonzalez, Ryan.
Yeah, that was a big win for Pascua, because Chiquita Gonzalez was a popular fighter and he was a very strong fighter, but he became that win actually appreciated through as years gone by, because Gonzalez is a Hall of Famer, and he had those great fights with Michael Carbajal that sort of made him a bigger star in America. Because when you talk about two great Mexican fighters fighting, there's a lot of ethnic pride there, but also when you have great fights, it becomes big. It's like Barrera Morales. It goes into the mainstream, and those fights kind of got Gonzalez into the mainstream. But Pacquiao was just not to be denied that night. He was counter-punching very effectively with that southpaw left hand, was walking Gonzalez into some big punches, and that's how he was able to get the victory. And that was really stunning because Gonzalez was undefeated at that time.
And for all of you who would be able to watch that fight, one of my tips is for you to look at round 6. The action in round 6 was really, really amazing. Now, for our final fight that we will review, as far as Filipinos able to win an upset, the great Jerry Penalosa versus Johnny Gonzalez for the WBO Bantamweight Championship.
Yes, Jerry Penalosa, he told me one time about this fight years later that he was actually scared. He was really concerned about Gonzalez because he saw what Gonzalez had done to Israel, in the Israel Vasquez fight, even though, he lost that fight. Johnny Gonzalez was a huge person at bantamweight, and Jerry was really a 115-pounder. Like Gonzalez was a featherweight who somehow got down to 118, and Jerry was worried, because Gonzalez was a big puncher. And then he saw him at the weigh-in, and he looked at him, and he saw the ribs on him. So this guy was really struggling. He's like, you know what, I got him. And he didn't really get him until, he basically lost every second of the fight until he knocked out Gonzalez. But what he did was he was looking for that shot. He knew that the vulnerability for Gonzalez was to the body. He was not going to be able to reach up and get real leverage on a shot to the head. So if you looked at that fight, there were a bunch of times he was looking for that left hand to the body, and then he finally gets it. And Gonzalez, all Gonzalez could think about was trying to breathe again. The moment he went down, he's like, the fight's over. I just want to be able to respirate.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, was the first major win for Jerry Penalosa, which eventually made him sort of a legend, and eventually get to be more active in the years to come. We will now turn it over to our friend Dennis Principe, who will be talking about a Filipino boxer who is currently making a lot of waves.
Thank you very much, Boyet and Ryan. And ito maswerte tayo ngayon because ito po sa ating segment for today ay makakasama natin ang isa sa mga hinahangaan ko nung simula pa na nag-amateur, nag-national team ito. At ngayon, he's doing great and on his way to hopefully an immediate shot at a world title. No? Ang tinutukoy po natin dito ay si Jade Bornea Champ. Magandang araw sa iyo dyan sa California.
Good morning din po dyan sa atin, sir.
Okay. Champ, alam mo, marami naman nakakakilala sa iyo, no? So, ito, diretsuhin na natin. From huling laban mo rito sa Jensen, ngayon dumiretso ka na dyan sa US, early September. Ibig sabihin ba nito, naghahanda na tayo na meron na tayong siguradong laban?
Yes, sir. Nag-antay kami ng big fight namin dito kaya habang maaga, pinapunta ko dito ng manager ko para makapaghanda.
Maganda yan. Nabanggit mo, big fight. Talaga bang big fight ba yung asahan natin? And if ever, gaano kalaki yan?
Opo, yun yung inaano namin. Kaya, stay ready lang. Kasi, biglaan hindi namin alam din kung baka mandatory kami yung sa IBF.
Oo, sino ba tina-target mo ngayon, champ, na kung sakali na champion?
Sa ngayon, sir, kahit kahit sinong champion, basta willing makipag-challenge, okay ako dyan.
Pero nabanggit mo, mandatory ka na rin, tama ba yun?
Yes, sir. Yes po.
Kanino ka mandatory right now?
Sa IBF po.
Okay, sa IBF. Okay, so ano yun?
Parang eliminator
pa
pala. Eliminator.
Mag-eliminator. Kasi alam ko, ang IBF, pag nag-mandatory ka, hindi ka na pwedeng lumaban ng mga tune-up or non-title, di ba?
Opo, sir.
Okay. And it's good na nandiyan ka na sa US because apparently dito sa Pilipinas, champ, humihigpit, ano? At parang pahirap magpa-boxing dito.
Kaya nga po kaya nagpapasalamat din ako sa manager ko kasi pinapunta niya ako dito para tuloy pa rin yung yung labas.
Oh, okay. Alam mo, isang bagay na naging close tayo, no? Simula nung time na umalis ka ng national team. No, I remember no, nakikiusap ka sa akin kung pwede matulungan, makabalik ka because talagang gusto mo pa no, na lumaban for the national team. Ngayon, ito, no, ditong Olympics, merong 2 silver medals at saka 1 bronze medal. Nung ba nangyayari yun, Jade? Bumabalik ba yung passion mo noon na parang pwede pa ako maging national team?
Sa ngayon sir, medyo natuwa din ako kasi sa amateur, parang pwede na rin yung professional. Baka next Olympic, makwalify din kami.
So ano pa rin? Nasa isip mo pa rin yun?
Opo, may pag-asa. Yung dream ko rin na maabot yung Olympic.
Okay. Pero champ, naalala ko nung magkausap tayo, no, na hindi ko alam, parang talaga napaka-emotional mo nun, no? Yung pakiusap mo na makabalik ka. Gaano ba ka-importante para sa'yo na maging part pa rin ng national team at yun nga, eventually makapaglaro sa Olympics?
Sa akin sir, kasi parang yung sir yung kumbaga, yun yung pilit ko abutin sa amateur career ko. Parang kahit nasa professional na ako, parang nag-hope pa rin ako na sana someday makaabot ako ng Olympic. Ngayon.
Hanggang ngayon, ganun pa rin yung nasa isip mo?
Yes, sir.
Oh, okay. Now, kahit na pwede, no? Ito lang ang problema. Kung siguro nasundan mo yung kay Yumir Marshall, apparently, yung ABAP, hindi masyadong believe dun sa programa ng professional at saka ng Olympics. Parang sa kanila, yung national team ka, dito ka lang, walang pro. Kahit na open na, ikaw ba, tingin mo? Ano bang, nung nangyayari yung kay Yumir Marshall na issue, ano bang nasa isip mo nun?
Sabi ko sa sarili ko, baka mabigyan din ng pagkakataon na kahit pro na ako, na makalaro pa rin ako ng Olympic kasi pwede na yung pro sa amateur sa mga ganun. Yun lang yung nasa isip ko nun, sir.
Okay. So, nung nanalo, ano ba timbang mo pala? Kung sakali, kasi di ba nagbago na yung nung time na umalis ka, meron pang light fly, tsaka iba pa yung mga timbangan nun. Ngayon ba, kung babalik ka ng national team, anong timbang ka papasok?
Sa sir, 52. Kasi yun naman nilalaroan ko ngayon sa pro.
52? Kay ano yun? Kay Carlo? Tama ba?
Yes.
Kay
Yes,
Carlo. Okay. Nung pumasok si Carlo, silver, di mo ba naisip na, pwede rin ako dyan Kayang-kaya mo rin
Oo, yun, naisip ko din yan. Pero siyempre, kumbaga, mas binigay sa kanila yung pagkakataon. Kaya, happy din ako sa kanila kasi sobrang din nila. Kumbaga, sobrang pagsusumikap din nila, naabot din nila yun. Kaya, proud ako sa kanila.
Yan naman ang kagandahan sa mga national team boxers, yung mga present at saka yung mga wala na, yung mga former, no? Kayo, di ba? Kahit na hindi kayo nag-abot, parang may natural na band, Yung parang kahit na hindi kayo nag-abot, pero alam mong boxer siya, parang close kayo, di ba? Nandun yung suporta.
Yes, sir. Opo. Sobrang proud ako sa kanila. Kasi alam ko, hindi madali. Sobrang hirap. Kaya humahanga talaga ako sa kanila.
Okay. Alright. So, moving forward, mga kailan ba natin malalaman, Jade, yung next fight mo as a professional, ngayon na nandiyan ka na sa US?
Siguro, bago matapos itong buwan na to, baka may schedule na kami, sir.
Alright.
Malaman na rin yan. Update din ako sa'yo, sir.
Update mo ako, kahit na meron ka ng vlog,
Yes, sir.
Okay, sige. Maraming salamat sa iyo, Champ. Jade Cornea, mag-ingat ka dyan at hanggang sa susunod nating kwentuhan.
Thank you sa sir sa pagkakataon na mag-usap tayo.
All right, there you have it, Jade Cornea, ang ating pambato 16-0 with 10 knockouts in the super flyweight division mandatory ng IBF champion. Balik tayo kina Boyet and Ryan.
Thank you very much, Dennis, for that. And now we go to our Fearless Fighter, brought to you by Eastern Communications. And our Fearless Fighter is WBC World Light Flyweight Champion Kenshiro, the amazing boy Teraji.
I want to say it like how he puts it on his Twitter handle, Kenshiro. Yes, Kenshiro is 18-0, 10 knockouts, very good fighter at 108 pounds. We were just talking about Pacquiao and Chiquita Gonzalez. Here's another very talented, potentially great 108 pounder. I think against Masamichi Ibuki, he's going to win by knockout. He's fighting one of his compatriots, but there's Ibuki has a lot of power, but he's not the sort of well-rounded fighter that Kenshiro is. Now, the reason why I say he's fearless, he's coming back from a COVID-19 diagnosis, and he rescheduled the fight for a couple weeks later. So he's doing everything he has to do to get back in the ring, and I'm very excited to see what Kenshiro has in store against Ibuki.
Well, that fight will happen tomorrow, September 22, at the City Gym in Kyoto, Japan. It'll be, correct me if I'm wrong, that'll be the 5th title defense for the amazing boy, Mr. Sangalia?
I believe so. He actually fought a couple of Filipinos.
Milan Milindo was one of them, yeah.
Yeah, Jonathan Takuning and Randy Patalker. And so Filipino fight fans should be pretty familiar with him. But yeah, he's been champion since 2017 and very, very exciting guy to watch.
And that was our Fearless Fighter, brought to you by Eastern Communications. And that's the final bell for today's episode of Round by Round, presented by Eastern Communications. I'm Boyet Sison.
And I'm Ryan Sangalia. We're on Facebook at 9 p.m. Monday through Friday and on our YouTube channel right after. So like, follow, share, and subscribe now.
Oh, the next edition of our program, it'll be Bill Velasco, Mrs. Sangalia, and yours truly will be answering the bell. This has been Round by Round, all boxing, all Filipino, all the time. Take care.